Welcome to Business Today Television. I'm Siddharth Zarabi from the International Media Center at the G20 Summit. Good afternoon, viewers. You've been with us through these 3 days, and today's final day, in fact, marks the fact that the summit is already over, because much of the main work, the heavy lifting, and the Delhi Declaration, which I'm sure will go down in the history books, has already been delivered and was delivered a day ahead of expectations. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has passed on the baton to Brazil. There's also an announcement of a virtual session in November, but that's the broader framework of the G20. On the show now, we are going to focus on one of the aspects that was part of the bilaterals on the sidelines of the summit, and that was the all-important India-United States of America bilateral between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Joe Biden. And among several announcements there, one key, extremely significant announcement in the technology space, and to discuss that, the announcement being sixth generation mobility, I have with me a panel of 3 experts from India, all of them with many years of policy making and ground level execution, to discuss what this alliance really means. Very happy to welcome NG Subramaniam, the chairman of the Bharat 6G Alliance. Welcome, Mr. Subramaniam. Mr. R. Chandrashekhar, former Telecom Secretary and former President of NASSCOM, also with us. Very warm welcome to you, Mr. Chandrashekhar. And Sanjay Kapoor, former CEO of one of India's, in fact, one of the largest operators, mobile operators in the world, and Telecom Expert, Sanjay Kapoor, also with us. Welcome, Sanjay. Thank you very much for joining us here on the show. I just want to quickly explain 2 or 3 key points of the India-US 6G alliance, and then we'll get to hear from our experts. It's currently a memorandum of understanding on Bharat 6G. President Biden and Prime Minister Modi have discussed collaborating in this sphere and forming a joint task force, cooperating in R&D, both in 5G and 6G, and the US has committed to support 5G pilots, Open RAN pilots in India. This is extremely significant. Much of it will bear fruit in the future, but for now I want to come to Mr. Chandrashekhar first. Explain to our viewers, sir, what is the significance of this, because several people would say, abhi to 5G ho hi raha hai, why are we now talking about 6G at this stage?
I think all of us know that technology is advancing at an incredible pace, and we are going headlong into digitalization, not just in India, but all across the world. All of this digitalization rests on the bedrock of telecommunications. And telecommunications has, of course, been marked by technology as well as economic considerations. Where do I get the best technology? Where do I get the cheapest products? And how do I build the most cost-efficient and effective telecommunication network? But in recent times, for a variety of reasons, the focus has shifted a little away, if I may say so, from technology and economics into trust and standards. And the reason for this is that because of the way in which geopolitics across the globe has been progressing, that trajectory, trust or the lack of it has become a major factor. And as anything and everything gets digitalized, the trust factor and the security of the telecommunication infrastructure becomes not just a matter of data security, but at the end of the day becomes a matter of national security. And since it rests on electronics and products which are manufactured through global supply chains, the point is that it is almost impossible for any country to be 100% self-sufficient, meaning everything from the raw material till the finished product is done in the country. These are all very complex global supply chains. Therefore, it is extremely challenging to protect the telecom infrastructure. Consequently, what has happened is that countries like India have gone in for Atmanirbhar. Countries like the US have announced a policy of friendshoring, meaning that they will only take it from people whom they rely on, countries and companies which they rely on. So all of these are shifts which are taking place as we speak. And 6G is the next generation. And therefore, the preparation, not just in terms of technology, economics, and manufacturing, but also in terms of trust and supply chains, become all the more important, because that is what the foundations have to be laid today. That, hugely increases the significance of partnerships and alliances, both at a national level as well as at a corporate level, and in terms of research, and also in respect of formulation of standards. Because even if you have, a very good technology, if it is not, compliant with global standards, then you still have a problem. So all of these, I think, increase the significance of this alliance hugely. So Siddharth, that's the sort of broad.
Mr. Subramaniam, the 2-3 key points that Mr. Chandrashekhar has mentioned: trust, reliability, a supply chain where you can actually know what is coming into your networks, both from a hardware and a software perspective. Add to this point, primarily from the point of view of India attempting to move into a sphere where the future is secure from a national security perspective as far as the telecom backbone is concerned.
I completely agree with what Chandra mentioned in terms of, trusted is one of the most important aspect, because increasingly telecommunication is going to become a horizontal on which every single vertical, whether it is banking, financial services, manufacturing, healthcare, every single vertical is going to be relying a lot more on the telecom as a backbone on which innovation, growth, efficiency, all the three pillars will actually take place. So in that context, I think, lot more innovation in the way in which the 6G technology will work is going to happen. Connectivity is going to be significantly improving. Coverage will be significantly improving. But beyond connectivity and coverage, which promises something like in 6G will be 10 times at least faster than 5G, the experience is going to be the key. And adding to the trusted and connectivity, coverage, and experience, there is going to be an element of sustainability, which is also going to be extremely crucial. In that sense, that the 6G networks will be a lot more intelligent, all enabled and defined by software more than the hardware. Until now, the technology is a lot more enabled by the hardware, while there is an element of software which is there. But increasingly, the network, the radios, everything is going to be more and more configurable and defined by software, which is India's strength. The software is also going to be augmented with a lot of artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and algorithms that will make the network itself will be, highly intelligent, while the network will continue to be heterogeneous, will need to be interoperating, and it will become a lot more self-healing, always on, and with embedded processing capability on the edge. Right? In this context, the difficulties involved in standards definition need not be overemphasized. To achieve the desired level of flexibility, adaptability, interoperability, open collaboration between academia, industry, startups, society, and the government is crucial. In that context, the alliance between Bharat 6G Alliance and NextG Alliance in the United States is a great step in the right direction.
Right. Sanjay, I'm coming to you. When I started covering telecom, and that was way back, I don't want to reveal my age on live television, but in 1999, at the first ITU I attended, I understood that telecom regulation is set by this, by the International Telecom Union, and it's a UN body. And I've seen over the years that it has delivered. Explain the significance of this, particularly because it seems to me that India is now acting as a guide for telecom standard setting, at least making that attempt, along with the United States, at a time when China dominates much of the hardware and increasingly the AI sphere as well, Sanjay Kapoor.
Yes, Siddharth, I'm glad you didn't touch upon 1999. That would have revealed my age as well. Because we both worked very closely together during those days. I still remember. I think the points that Mr. Subramaniam and Mr. Chandrashekhar made are very vital ones. I'll try to give it a slightly different angle. Standards in telecommunications are always necessary, and collaboration is always necessary because the fundamental premise of telecom is around interoperability. If telecom cannot work seamlessly across in a country or across countries, then it is not worth its while. And this every operator, every manufacturer, every stakeholder recognizes fully. In the past, like you said, when we were developing 2G and 3G, probably the stakes were not as large. And therefore, at that time also, if you ask me, I was on the board of GSMA, and we would sign MOUs between operators joining collaboration on development of 4G LTE, right? But governments were lesser involved probably at that stage. But as the stakes went up with the dividends that data and digital brought, and like Mr. Subramaniam said today, it's a horizontal, it's not a vertical. With that, the stakes for the governments have gone up. And therefore, now you see more collaboration coming at a government level, at a country level, to say we need to be overseeing what's going on. It's not about the operators. We are big stakeholders in it as well. I think this is clearly a pronunciation of that. The second, look, 3GPP has been developing the standards for 4G, 5G, 2G. It's not that they will not be involved in developing the standards for 5G. And ETSI, which actually developed this, has 6 or 7 regional units, which includes US, it includes Korea, it includes Japan, it includes China, and also includes India. So I think India is a quintessential part because India is a very large geography and now a very significant player when it comes to digital and data. For all stakeholders, whether OTT players or the equipment providers or what have you. So I think all of them. Now, where we are today, with the power that we've generated, and our operators have been claiming that they generate more data in India than probably in any other part of the world, right? And I think other than China, who's our direct peer, we probably are ahead of everybody else. So I think it'll be a collaborative effort. And India will have a say. It's glad to see that India is joining hands with the US. But I think because of the interoperability, I think more stakeholders will come together. Everybody will partake. And eventually there'll be standards that will evolve around everybody's good. It cannot be one country is good or two countries good. Ultimately, 6G is going to deliver dividends for everybody. Now, one thing I wish to bring about, look, 5G took about 10 years to develop, and people are envisaging that by 2030, we'll have 6G on the platter as well, which means 7 or 8 years from today. Now, India is starting at the right moment with these big announcements so that we can actually be very serious stakeholders in what is going on. However, I'm a grounds level person. I'm involved. I have been involved in, making sure these services reach the consumer. And all I can tell you is that no matter how good a technology we develop, eventually it has to be economically viable. And given where 5G stands today, I think the jury is still out. We need to make 5G viable for everybody else. for 6G to succeed. If 5G doesn't succeed, then 6G, gets delayed a wee bit, because with the shortening capital cycles, the operators have to be viable. And if the technologies keep staring at them, no matter how good they are, but if they are not economically viable, then everybody thinks about it two times. And all the stakeholders, it's not about the operators, all stakeholders make money out of the same pie. So I think good efforts, great announcements. I'm so happy that India is now a leader in the development of these technologies, but eventually it'll be a global play. It'll be for the betterment of the whole world, and all stakeholders will partake.
Sanjay, I'll come back to you on the point that you mentioned about viability of 5G, but I want to go to Mr. Chandrashekhar. And the question, sir, I have for you is this just an attempt to take on China, which already has an edge from a manufacturing and frontier technology perspective, or is it born out of other factors? Mr. Chandrashekhar.
So that actually, I think it's a more complex canvas where there are many factors involved. Certainly, the need and the desire to take on China is an important factor. As I said, both from an economic point of view, as well as from a technology point of view. However, that's certainly not the only factor. From an India perspective, we know that the whole thrust on semiconductors has been there for some time now. The thrust on electronics, the thrust on computing infrastructure, all of that is of relatively recent origin. And part of the problem has been that these are highly globalized supply chains, and at the same time, under the WTO and under ITA, the ability to prevent or to put barriers in terms of customs duty on certain kinds of electronics in these areas is very, very limited. However, security is a different card altogether. It's a different business, and that is not covered under the WTO. So that is one aspect that we have to keep in mind. So I think the US has been also quick to recognize that there are underlying security threats. Sometimes there are also contentions that the whole security fear is played up, and it's a part of a commercial warfare between different companies, different countries, different levels of technology. But that is a separate question. The fact is that trust is important, and even suspicion is not conducive to trust. That is why the US has brought in what they call the rip and replace policy, where they have actually pulling out any Chinese equipment in the US telecom infrastructure and replacing it with other equipment. That's where India comes in, because they still need partners in terms of the manufacturing. The other aspect is that, as Sanjay and Mr. Shah were pointing out, the Indian capabilities in the area of IT and design, including telecommunication software, is well known. In the past, we were not great originators of telecommunication technology. The standards were more or less a received wisdom, and we were consumers of both the products and the technology. However, now, in view of all of these developments, Indian capabilities in research in the telecommunications area have grown enormously. A lot of the IITs, a lot of the triple ITs have focused on this. And from an initial 1 or 2 such centers, today we have more than 20 such centers which are of a global level in terms of their capability. And the introduction of Open RAN and shared open random access, radio access networks is an important thing, because it has an impact on cost. When infrastructure is shared, the cost for operators also goes down. So India has been a pioneer in many business models and in terms of digital public infrastructure. So there are a lot of opportunities to innovate, both in terms of technology and in terms of the business models. And that is where I think this alliance is coming from. It's a mutual need for India and the US. It is also based on a mutual, shall we say, lack of trust for very different reasons, maybe, especially vis-a-vis China. That's the elephant in the room. But it is absolutely essential for countries to form these alliances, because in this world, for all the reasons that I mentioned, you cannot secure yourself acting unilaterally for a whole range of reasons. Even both Sanjay and Mr. Shah have mentioned that. But you therefore can choose who you are vulnerable to and make sure that there is a partnership in place. And that is, I think, the journey that we are now seeing for the future. It's positioning ourselves for that future of 2030 when 6G comes in and becomes the standard.
In fact, since you mentioned the elephant, I would say the dragon, the Chinese dragon, and its edge in 6G technology that's been playing out on the screens, viewers. It started R&D work on 6G in 2019. It holds over 40% of 6G patents. It's already launched a test satellite. Huawei is testing networks and is exerting a strong influence, which China does across sectors on the ITU 6G standards. Mr. Subramaniam, I am coming to you to explain to our viewers, you had touched upon that, but to expand on that further, what will happen at the industry and operator level as far as 6G is concerned in India? Because we've just recounted what China has been doing. Explain to our viewers what we can look forward to happening in India in this space.
I think, the 5G advanced 6G, if you really look at it, these are the phases that we are going to go through as the mobile technology is penetrating across India. And the government is rightfully creating a digital public good infrastructure on the back of such a technology. This is especially 5G. The promises of 5G need to be realized. Then the glimpses of 5G advanced and 6G technology from a standards perspective, as we see it, is going to make companies in a mode of being in a perpetual transformation. What I mean is that it's going to be, businesses are going to be inherently sensing, inferring, deciding, and personalizing at scale, right? This is the kind of opportunity that the technology is going to offer. In order to do that, there are a lot of work that needs to be done. Okay? First of all, the technology needs to be meaningful to the society at large. I think India's 6G vision, which our Prime Minister launched 2-3 months ago, which culminated in the formation of the Bharat 6G Alliance itself, we have tasked to do about 6 different working groups. Right? One is, the spectrum. What kind of spectrum that we need, and how do we make sure that the spectrum is efficiently utilized, right, and used for its purpose safely and securely. The second working group is going to be looking at devices, sensors, and manufacturing ecosystems, because it's not about innovating and having a standard, but then you need to make sure that we have a very robust device ecosystem which is able to support those standards. The devices include sensors, and it's just not the devices, but we must have a very solid manufacturing ecosystem meeting some of the India's and regional needs of this technology. Then the overall technology itself, in terms of the radios, in terms of the core software, and the interoperability that people talked about it, the intelligence that we want to have, the self-optimization, self-healing and sustainability aspects that comes into it, all of that need to be built in. So in that context, I think the devices, sensors, and manufacturing ecosystem, how do we build all of that in India, supporting some of those standards, somewhat in parallel, is going to be very, very crucial. And that's going to be one of the critical working groups that Bharat 6G Alliance is going to look at. Then we are going to have a working group on technology itself, then the applications, right? For example, what does this technology is going to offer to education? What does this technology is going to offer to healthcare, right? And so on and so on, manufacturing, right? Each one of this and how do we create applications that are going to run on this technology that will make businesses efficient and support their perpetual mode of transformation. And of course, the next one is really what are the use cases? Now, how do we make sure that the operators really have sufficient revenue streams beyond what they have today, right? All these working groups are formed, and we intend to collaborate extensively with the US and other like-minded initiatives on 6G that's happening in Europe, Japan, and Korea to create regional focus, national focus, as well as globally the standards need to be applicable, and the devices and ecosystems need to be in place so that the overall public good is achieved.
Okay. Sanjay, coming to you in the last couple of minutes that we have on the show, and this is to pick up on that earlier point where you spoke about the viability of 5G. Am I correct in understanding that you are alluding to the current state of sort of return on capital invested in 5G, and therefore saying that commercial deployment of 6G will have to wait for that?
No, I wouldn't suggest that anything will wait. But what I'd suggest is that these are seamless moves. Ultimately, the operators who will invest in a very robust 5G environment will automatically move to 6G if they want to stay relevant in the market. So I think it'll be truly a natural flow into the newer technologies. My question and my doubts were a little different here. The doubt here is that we are in an environment today, and this is global, that with shortening of the technology cycles and more frequent investment cycles, the oligopolistic structure of the world is condensing to duopoly almost in most parts of the world. The third operator and the fourth operator with weaker balance sheets, lesser market share, find it very difficult to invest in these newer technologies because they are on the higher band and they require a very different type of investment to stay competitive and relevant. You look at China, for example, and what they've done in their 5G, for example, 3 million BTS already. They are talking about increasing it. They'll have 26 BTS for every 10,000 people. Now, if you want to create that sort of an experience going forward, and that becomes the gold standard, then 4 operators in a market can't afford it, right? Only 2 can. But if 2 can, then how do they make sure that even those guys in a $2.5, $3 market are able to recover their investments in a much shorter time frame? Now, this will remain a challenge. I accept everything that Mr. Subramaniam said around US and the synergies that exist. I don't know what will be the synergies between US and us on the economics, because that's a very different market. Their business models are very different. Their ARPUs are far higher than ours. So India will have to truly evolve something of their own and take a lead on that. And we've been doing it very successfully, whether it's outsourcing or it's tower companies. We have been at the helm of innovation of those business models. So I'm sure, we'll find something like that in the future as well. But till the operators who do all the heavy lifting in making the infrastructure and then serving various verticals, if they don't make money and if they don't find their balance sheets good enough to invest into these future technologies, no matter how good they are, they will always pull back, or they will do just a tick in the box, right? And say, okay, we've launched it. I think the definition of what the consumer experience will be in future will undergo a change. These guys will have to make money. And that's how the real good to the economy will happen. And the dream of the nation will be realized on how we use 6G to actually increase the GDP of this country, the effectiveness of our businesses, and connect every individual in this country to do whatever he wants to on a 360-degree basis in his life successfully. So I think it does depend on economics heavily. Until the heavy lifters make money, it'll become very difficult to sustain these technologies in shortening life cycle of technologies and more frequent investment cycles.
Viewers, you just had 3 different expert views on what is just an MOU, but clearly from the answers that our experts on the panel have spoken about today, this is a future which is already happening, and I'm glad that they took out the time to give us a glimpse into that. And I would just like to end the discussion today by saying that this is a digital partnership. We've already also announced a mega connectivity partnership. In some ways, that too takes on China and its a BRI initiative. So geopolitics coming together with economics and the interests of individual countries, and India right bang and center in the middle of it. That's the key takeaway as far as one of the crucial technology related developments from the G20 sidelines is concerned. Mr. Chandrashekhar, Mr. Subramaniam and Sanjay, thank you very much for your time with us today. With that, it's a wrap on this show. We'll be back with more. Until then, goodbye.
The spotlight on a unique connection. A heartwarming handshake